segment. All right. So, one of the hot topics on Twitter for the last, oh, geez, probably 2 years has been around quantity versus quality when it comes to comics. I'm sure a lot of people can guess why that's been a hot topic. Um, but it's an interesting topic nonetheless. You have obviously folks that have the argument of quality art takes time, and in most cases, yes, that is very true. I mean, there are some exceptions of some folks like Kirby and some machines, right, that can just crank out work in just a crazy fashion. Um, but again, they when they work for the mainstream, they have a plethora of support, right? They do not have to worry about marketing. They do not have to worry about budgeting. They can just put their head down and draw. That would be awesome, right? If we could all get paid to do that. But when you're an indie, you're wearing many hats. I mean, literally and figuratively. And for people that are doing line art, for example, and for folks that want to do extreme detail and just try to create a masterpiece, essentially, yeah, they may take several years. And we've seen that with folks that are quote unquote pros or just new indie creators that are just creating some really unique books with crazy detail. Sure, they could reduce that detail, get it out quicker, but they probably wouldn't be as proud as that of that work, and that work wouldn't become as good of marketing material in the future for future books, right? And that material may not be talked about much in the future because they didn't go all out. And so it's a tough thing to balance. Now, I have no issue with folks that are focusing on quantity, right? If everyone has a budget, everyone can only afford certain artists. Everyone would love to have Dale Keown on their project or folks at that caliber, but it's not feasible for most folks. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're a guy that's able to crank out multiple books per year, by all means, that's awesome, regardless of the quality level, right? And that's subjective as well. The only issue that I see is when those folks are trying to take digs at the other folks that are taking multiple years or taking their time because they're focusing on quality, right? They're trying to create something massive. And so I don't think that's okay. I think that's actually a weak argument to try to garner your own sales, right? You're trying to push down other creators. I mean, you're essentially punching up at some of these professional creators in order to get more sales because, oh, well, I'll get you 5 books a year, or I'll get you whatever quantity of books a year. Yeah, but are those books gonna leave a mark, right? Are they gonna wow you? Some people may not need to be wowed, right? They're okay with, right, like the current, right, Disney quality of films, right? Oh, there's movies constantly. It's great. It's just basic entertainment. They're happy with it. No problem with that. But a lot of that audience isn't attacking companies that are releasing films less frequently or comic book creators that are releasing less frequently. It's just some creators, right, that are taking those digs, and to me, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I understand why they're doing it, right? It's a marketing tactic, unfortunately. And so that's something that, for me, I would rather create one awesome book every 3 years than 3 mediocre books per year that get forgotten and they do not end up becoming dark horse creations, right? They don't break through the the indie scene. They don't break through the audience's expectations, right? I would rather create something that really wows folks and leaves them really hungry for the next book. And a good example of that, let's say in the mainstream, would be films, right? Right now, folks are making videos constantly complaining about Disney, right? The Disney quality sucks. Disney this, Disney that. Disney's woke, blah blah blah, right? It's monotonous. It's lazy, but it gets clicks. It's rage bait. But man, are they cranking them out at a frequent pace? There's so many of these complain tubers that sit there and complain about Disney's quality, but they never praise the quantity. But they one second. My dog is very large and has a very big bark. um, anyways, they'll sit there and they'll complain about that nonstop. And but then they'll go and they'll promote and try to sell low quality indie comics or mainstream comics and brag about the frequency. It's completely lopsided. And they'll ignore some of the fantastic comics that come out less frequent because, well, promoting those books won't get them clicks and it won't make them more money. And so, for me, a great example is Christopher Nolan, right? He releases a film probably every 3 to 4 years, but it's always a banger. It's always a movie that gets talked about year over year over year. It'll get re-released in theaters, just like Interstellar did recently. He's a household name. People are okay waiting 3 to 4 years for a film because they know it's going to be epic. And I think all of his fans would agree. I would rather have an epic Oppenheimer, Interstellar, Inception versus a mediocre 1.5 hour film that's just not that impressive with low quality CGI. Because he's a guy that he does not want to use CGI. He uses a lot of props. I mean, he goes all out in regards to cinematography. And that's how some of these indie creators are. They would rather create a banger every 3 to 4 years with just crazy detail without 3D assets, without shortcuts, and just take the hits of some of the folks that are not okay with that. But again, it's the artist's decision, the creator's decision on which route they want to take. And so, it's unfortunate that like, I don't see many folks complaining about quantity or saying that person's creating too many books. Like, shame on them. The only time you'll see that is when those folks that are bragging about quantity are taking digs at those that are slower and focusing on quality. Because then it's like, okay, yeah, you're doing high quantity, but look at the quality, right? That's when they're going to get put under a spotlight, and not in a good manner. And so, it would be nice, hopefully in the future, if right that discourse goes away. Let creators work at their own pace. Obviously, as long as those creators are communicating with their backers and keeping them up to date, that's the big thing. But everyone has their own pace, and there's also a lot of creators that the first time they don't know how long it's going to take. It's a guesstimated shipping date or fulfillment date, and life events happen. People have kids, might have to go back to full time work or move, you name it. So hopefully that discourse kind of quiets down over time. So yeah, that's my weekly rant. So, um, but yeah, let's see. Does anyone have any questions for me? One of the reasons why I wanted to start live streaming is, of course, I want to build an audience. YouTube is necessary for it. Um, Going back to one of my points about the mainstream, right? They do the marketing. They have legacy characters, they have legacy titles. It's a lot easier for the creators to just focus on their work. But for us, if we were to do that and then just plop it on a crowdfunding site, it would go unnoticed for the most part, even if it's like high caliber. Um, that's just the nature of being indie. Unfortunately, we have to do the marketing, we have to do the promotion, we have to do the finance, everything, which takes time away from creating. And the other thing too, which I should have mentioned, when it comes to folks that take longer, sometimes it's because they have a 9 to 5. If you have a 9 to 5 and you have a kid and a family, right? A lot of us, we don't get to actually work until, well, 9 o'clock on our stuff. and then you have a window that you can try to be productive before you need to go to sleep so you can maintain your 9 to 5 and continue to support your family. So there are some unrealistic expectations out there and folks that, oh, you have to produce this much this quick, or it's unacceptable to take this long. And it's like, you got to try to do it yourself before you can make some of those judgments, because it's extremely hard. So